Well, good evening, RDA family. I hope you're all doing very well. Now, the people that have been following RDA from the beginning would know that this is actually how Reignite Democracy Australia was born. In August, during the lockdowns, Melburnians, Victorians had no way of expressing their annoyance, their anger of the lockdowns and the way that, everything had been handled. So Reignite Democracy Australia figured, well, we'll run an online protest. And that's how everything began. And here we are, 7 months later, doing that and a whole lot of other things. Unfortunately, it was the most recent lockdown that inspired me to bring back this tradition, which is unfortunate. And although the restrictions, many of them have been lifted, we are still not free. Gatherings are still restricted, which makes protesting a human right extremely difficult to do. There is obviously the protest on the 20th planned, and it just seems very circumstantial, or good timing for some, bad timing for others, that this is happening. So there's still a long road ahead of us. Now, I just want to let you know that this type of program is not just a conversation where you have to watch people talking about what they know about. This is actually a protest, okay? Because mass protests are illegal, so this is the best thing that we can do. So you can see on the screen there that there is actually a survey for you to fill out. It's quite simple. I'll actually just show it to you right here in a second. Oh gosh, was that sound on? Anyway. Okay, so here's the website here. So basically you just go to that URL and you'll see the survey there. It's very simple to fill out. You just tick the boxes that apply to you, and the ones that don't tick them. So that's fine. And look, tonight we have some really great... That's not what I want. So sorry, guys. It's been a while since I've done this, Anyway, tonight we have some great speakers. We have Bev Mcarthur, we have Morgan C Jonas, Richard Riordan, Tony Nikolic, who is from the Concerned Lawyers Network, and Bernie Finn. Now, I will let the guests do most of the talking tonight, but I do want to just let you know, if you haven't heard already, that Sanjeev Sabhlok and myself and a few others as well, we've actually started a political movement. It's not a political party, it's a movement. So we've already got 2,000 citizens signed up, and it's been under 24 hours. Now, it might seem a bit contradictory that I have 3 Liberal members of Parliament speaking on tonight's show, but it's not a party, it's a movement. So it's not in competition with them, So I still really want to hear what the Liberal members have to say. Now, before I get into the speakers, I am just going to play a quick snippet from myself and Sanjeev's talk about the political movement, and then we'll get straight into the speakers from there, okay? I'll see you guys, and I will be talking at the end, so I'll see you at the end. How do we get them to listen? Now, this is the fun part. We are coming for your jobs. That's what we're doing. We're coming for your paychecks because you have been getting our taxpayers' money and not doing the right thing by us. It's gone on way too long. We've given you the benefit of the doubt a year to do the right thing, and still you aren't doing the right thing. We don't want to do this. Do you think I want to be in Parliament for 24 hours talking to these people? No way. No one wants to do that. But we have to, because you've given us absolutely no choice. You're not listening to us. So we are going to play your game, and we are going to beat you at it. And I'll tell you why. All the people that I know, all the intelligent people, the lawyers, the doctors, the influencers, all the people I know, we have over 1 million Australians that are voting, 1 million adults voting on your job. That's right. The movement's already started. It's a political movement. It's not a party. We don't want to start a party, but we will if we have to, if you don't listen. We're already getting smaller parties involved. We're already getting a group together. It's absolutely too late for you to turn back now. It's happening. The movement started. You can delete me off Facebook. You can delete me off YouTube. It doesn't matter because we're coming. It's too late. Daniel Andrews, I hope you've had fun because it's over for you. It's absolutely over.
Yes.
100% over. Yeah. We're coming for all the marginal seats, okay? We're coming for all the marginal seats. We're going to be organised. I tell you, I got website developers. I've got letterbox drops. I've got 50,000 members that will go outside of their house and drop letterboxes. You are finished. You're finished. Like, it's over. It's done. We're too angry now. This is not living, okay? So we actually can't not do this. You've actually forced our hand because of how badly you've done your job. I don't want to do this. I want to be with my family. I want to be spending time with my nieces and nephews, thinking about marriage and children for myself. I don't want to be doing this, but you're not doing it. So we have to. That's it. So the slogan is, guys, the slogan is, we are coming. And that's it. Now, if you want to follow the movement, it's www.reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au/we are coming. Because we are coming. That's it.
Well done, Monica.
It's done.
Why do we need the government to be in our house and telling us that you can't go? Like, for example, right now, I'd gone to Matthew Guy's office and the police drove me out from there. I put out a little thing on Facebook. They drove me out saying it's unlawful. I can't even go and stand outside my public representative's office. This is the situation in our so-called paradise, Australia, which has been lost. And I don't think we want to have it lost forever. We need to stand up and rise. And I think what I'm asking here, this is my very short summary. I want you guys to pay attention. I'm asking this to all the politicians here, first of all. I'm asking all the people to ask the politicians. Please ask all the politicians. This is my last ditch. I will not make this call again. This is my last ditch call. All the Australians of Australia, all the politicians and all the people, please wake up and restore the original freedoms of Australia, for which we all came here, for which all of us have come from Europe and other, those communist countries. They've come here for freedoms. We did not come here. Nobody came here to be imprisoned. Okay? So please do that. Otherwise, this is my obvious open threat. And I've also made a threat on my Facebook video today that we will organize mass civil disobedience. It doesn't matter if I'm the only person standing there and doing it. I'm quite comfortable. Till the very end of my life, nobody can trample me. Nobody can step on me. If you step on me, guys, you're going to face the consequences. Because I'm not an animal. I'm not a sheep. I'm not a chicken. I'm a human, and I've got my origin in the origins of life itself on this planet. I owe my life not to anybody who lives here in Australia today. Please remember that, politician, that I owe no allegiance to any of you. I owe my ultimate allegiance to myself and my freedoms. And I think all of us, if we decide that that's what we are humans, we're not sheep, we have to be treated with respect. We have to be told why is wearing a mask required outside. Brett Sutton has blocked me. These guys continuously block me, okay, if I ask questions. That's the kind of totalitarian society we live in. We don't want that. We're building a coalition as we speak. I'm asking the politicians that if you don't organize, I'll come out politically. We'll organize and we'll get you out of your job. I don't know how many will succeed. We will fight till the very end. We will not let Australia become China. So this is my last ditch effort, last ditch appeal. Hopefully this will be, reach at least some politicians. Thank you, everyone.
I'm Bev Mcarthur, the member for Western Victoria Region. My electorate covers about a third of rural Victoria, and we're shut down. We're locked up. Businesses are closed. People have to wear masks. For what? We're hundreds of kilometres away from the nearest case. And in any case, why should any of Victoria be locked down? Why? This government, under Daniel Andrews, has failed Victorians. Failed because after a year, they still can't manage hotel quarantine. They can't do contact tracing either. They must still be using sticky notes and fax machines. Because otherwise, why would they lock you down? This doesn't happen in New South Wales. They have a case, they sort it out, and they get on with life. No businesses are shut down over the whole state just because there's a few cases in an isolated area. Children can't go to school. This is ridiculous. The shops across my electorate have all had to close. Businesses are on their knees, and in a time when they were going to have their best weekend, again, a holiday weekend, he shuts their doors. This man's a megalomaniac, and I can tell you, he does not need more power. He has already too much power over our lives. We need to get Victoria back and working.
G'day guys, how's it going? Morgan here. First of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to Monica and the team from RDA for doing a terrific job in representing the people since the inception of this crisis. Now, as many of you are aware, the consequences of the lockdown have been very detrimental on society. Since last year, we've seen the destruction of countless amounts of businesses, the loss of countless amounts of livelihoods, and the mental health crisis that is emerging is going to plague our country for many, many years to come. But another consequence of these lockdowns is the severing of the relationship between the public and the police. What we've witnessed from last year to this year is a disparity in how policing is conducted. Now, what we all thought was that the job of the police is to enforce the law without favour or fear. In other words, without any form of bias or favouritism. But unfortunately, on several instances, we've seen Victoria Police using what they refer to as their discretion to allow certain activities to proceed and certain activities not proceed, despite all activities being at odds with the chose directions. To give you a few examples, we've seen the Invasion Day protest from earlier this year, where thousands of people gathered in the city and protested for their cause. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with anyone protesting for whatever reason they choose. That is part of living in a democratic country. But this particular example is interesting, as was the Black Lives Matter Day rally last year, in that the chose directions were in force. Now, despite the chose directions being in force, we witnessed Victoria Police not enforcing those particular directions. Now, we look back to Cup Day last year, where there were crowds much, much smaller. Once again, the chose directions were in force, but that time they were enforced by the police. Now, there were far less people at the Cup Day protest compared to these other ones, yet for whatever reason, somewhere in the executive command of Victoria Police, they decided that some protests are okay and others are not. Now, unfortunately, for Victoria Police and the government, these disparities are being noticed by the public more and more. Just like how Australia Day was cancelled, Anzac Day was cancelled, because supposedly these events are not COVID safe. Yet, of course, we see other events which appear to be considered COVID safe by the government. Now, the major problem that is transpiring from all of this is that the public are well aware of the bias and the public are noticing. And this is causing a tremendous amount of distrust from the public to the police. If we can't expect the police to enforce the law without bias, then we can't expect the police to do their job as per their own code of conduct. This is a huge problem. And what it appears is that Victoria Police is enforcing the chose directions selectively based on the ideological outlook of the Premier, Daniel Andrews. And that is a road we most definitely don't want to go down. And this could be the end of the relationship between the public and the police unless something huge changes. Now, there's something you can do about this. You can write to your local police station and you can express your concerns. You can submit complaints. You can reach out to your members of parliament, because the last place we ever want to live in is a place where people are treated unfairly. Thank you. I'm Morgan Jonas, signing out.
When it comes to the chose directions, I understand that you guys have a degree of discretion in regards to how you enforce those directions. Is that true? You've got discretion. So what I'm curious to know is, what are the factors involved in determining that discretion? For example, the chose directions were enforced on January 26th, where there were thousands of people in the city to commemorate what some people refer to as Invasion Day. I went there to have a look. I observed no social distancing. I observed huge crowds. And I'm also aware that the chose directions were enforced, yet nobody from Victoria Police was enforcing those directions. So what I'd like to know is, what is the decision-making process to supposedly use this discretion to allow a crowd of thousands to go ahead, and then say, compared to Cup Day when we were kettled, or other events?
Good question. Yeah, and unfortunately I'm not in a position to answer that, because that's the executive command that make those decisions.
Yeah, because sorry, I'm not finished, sorry. What it appears to me is that whether it's Black Lives Matter, Invasion Day, Chinese New Year, which was never cancelled, which was going to go ahead, which draws crowds of thousands. The only reason it's off is because we're in a quote, snap lockdown, but that was going to go ahead. It appears to me that the directions fall in line with the ideological outlook of the Premier Daniel Andrews, and that Victoria Police are not enforcing the directions without favour or fear. And what the message it sends to the community is that there's a bias within Victoria Police.
That's right.
And that is going to sever the relationship between you and us.
I certainly don't want that to happen, and that's a really political question, and I'm actually not allowed to
This is
answer.
political. Victoria Police is a political
I'm not allowed to
organisation.
comment on political.
I've come down to Melbourne this week because Parliament's supposed to sit. Parliament's sitting this week to extend the state of emergency. This state of emergency power that Daniel Andrews has had now for nearly a year has been used irresponsibly and continues to be used as his cheap way out of managing the coronavirus here in Victoria. This last 5-day lockdown that we've all had to endure, whether in the city or the country, has come at a huge cost to Victorians. It has cost businesses, it has cost families, it has cost our elderly in nursing homes who again are looking at a week where no one can visit them. It has added to our hospital waiting list. The state of emergency is there for times of great disaster, for things that governments can't plan for. Daniel Andrews and his crew have had 12 months to put a plan in place to keep Victorians safe. Instead, they continue to use their powers to take your rights away, and they want another 12 months at it. It's not good enough, it's not what Victorians want, and Victorians cannot afford another time, another period of lockdown, of harsh lockdown without reason. From Mildura to the city, to Gippsland, to Western Victoria, we are surrounded by businesses and communities being forced to shut down because Daniel Andrews can't manage his contact tracing, can't manage his hotel quarantine, and it's the small people in Victoria, it's the mums, dads, families and small businesses that are paying an untold cost with no compensation and very little to look forward to. So what I say, and what all Liberals will be saying, what the Victorian Parliament needs to say, is no more state of emergency Daniel Andrews.
My name's Tony. I'm a member of the Concerned Lawyers Network. We are comprised of lawyers, researchers, volunteers, and we are affiliated with medical groups and other legal fraternities abroad. The information that I'm going to give in this video is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific legal advice. If you would like to know more about the Concerned Lawyers Network, and we encourage you to do so, please visit our website at concernedlawyersnetwork.net. What we are looking at businesses who have suffered a financial loss. Those financial loss that has occurred as a result of the lockdowns. The lockdowns that have been brought upon Australians by virtue of the unprecedented events that have occurred since COVID. Indeed, there have been a balanced approach that some have considered. However, we believe that potential actions may arise with respect to decisions that have been made by policymakers to lock down the country and indeed states on a state-by-state basis, and what appears to be, and most concerning, on a perpetual basis, on a presumption that if a vaccine was to be rolled out, a vaccine that they acknowledge will not eradicate this virus. Rather, what they say is reduce the symptoms and the controversial nature of those symptoms that are yet to be adequately sequenced. We do not propose to provide answers per se. Rather, we want to ask questions. We want to ask questions in an open, free democracy, which is something we should be doing. Unfortunately, and sadly so, those questions have been stifled. People who have come out and asked questions have been ridiculed, oppressed, detained, and in some instances, there has been unnecessary violence put upon those people. Indeed, it is our view that anything that is to be done should be done peacefully. There is no room here for anything other than a peaceful redress of what has happened. To that end, what we ask is for people who have suffered a financial loss as a result of operating a business to contact the Concerned Lawyers Network. In there, when you go to our website, concernedlawyersnetwork.net, you'll see that there is a contact page, and in there you just fill out the appropriate form. Send that to us and we'll endeavour to get back to you as soon as possible. So what of these state of emergency powers? Well, those emergency powers have allowed the government to bypass many, many democratic processes that would ordinarily provide the Australian citizens with an avenue upon which they could ask questions, legitimate questions, and have those questions answered. But that hasn't been the case. Anyone that's come out and asked a very simple question, for instance, what is this vaccine I'm putting into my body? How does that vaccine affect me? What is that going to do to my children? Well, we don't know. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone knows. But yet, there are indications that many organisations in and around Australia want to make it mandatory upon people to take this. You cannot work, you cannot live. So on top of being asked to stop working, to stop operating your business, you're being told that if you don't take a vaccine that hasn't undergone clinical trials to the extent that one would expect, then you could lose your livelihood. Is that the Australia we grew up in? No, not that we can see. Is there a balanced approach that we can take to this? We think so. And it is our view that people need to start standing up. They need to stand up, and you need to wake up, and you need to see what is actually occurring out there. And what is occurring out there is something to the extent that if we are to ask a question, you're oppressed. Well, if anything, that should encourage the Australian people to stand up and say, well, why are you blocking the other side? Why are you not wanting that information? It's not enough just to say it's dangerous and selfish. That's not how this works. A nice, educated debate, civil, peaceful, is what is required. And that needs to be a public debate. It needs to be one that's brought out into the public. It's not one that should be in the shadows of the halls of Parliament. By way of example, why is it, or why was it, that policymakers saw it was fitting for people to attend large stores to buy groceries or whatever it may be? They had on their masks. They were exercising social distancing as best as they could, because there really was no enforcement in these large firms or in the large stores. They weren't really policed, were they? And yet, mum and dad businesses running a very similar type of business, whether it be a grocery store, a fruit shop, whether it be a restaurant, they weren't allowed to operate under the same conditions of social distancing and masks. If it really was the case that social distancing and masking was appropriate, then although a normal mum and dad store may not be able to fit 400 people, they might have been able to fit 2 or 3 or 4 at a time and circulated that. Well, that was not provided to the Australian business owner. These sorts of conditions were exclusive to one group. That meant the majority of business owners in Australia were excluded by way of a policy. It is our view then that we are certainly investigating the prospects as to whether the exclusion of that group was a discriminatory process, given that the circumstances around that were that you could operate a large business with masks and exercising social distancing and following the edicts that have been put down by chief health officers. And on the other hand, those same principles upon which they were following here in the large firms were not allowed to be applied for the mum and dad businesses, which could have reduced the impacts of their financial loss. It is our view then that people really need to wake up and say, well, hang on, we've just excluded a large part of the Australian population. We've excluded them from operating their business in similar or same circumstances as the larger companies. Why is that? Well, why was that policy driven? Well, we certainly want to look at that, and we think that everyone should wake up. We encourage you to go to our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page. Go there and please support us, because we are doing what we can to support you. That is certainly not only the avenue that we are looking at. We are looking at other avenues too. We're here to support the Australian people. Make no bones about it. We are here to support, and we do request that you support us in return. We ask that you look at how this is going to go, what's happening, and where we're going to take it. Well, we can't do that without your support. Please, get on board. This is not the Australia that we all grew up in. Asking a question is not shameful, it is not selfish, and it should not be labelled as such, and it's disgusting to see that anyone that comes up with just a nice, simple question is being ridiculed publicly. They are being put down, shamed. This is not the Australia we grew up in. This is not the Australia that we should be residing in. At the end of the day, what we need our politicians, especially the Prime Minister, to stand up and say, how can we get this and move this forward in a unified manner? One that can tell us now that regardless of all these new strains that are coming out, open the debate and make it public, unify it, allow people, the Australian people who are intelligent enough to understand what's happening. We have members who have been excluded from certain websites merely for posting a scientific journal, one that has been peer-reviewed. That is not something that occurred in Australia. And that is certainly not something that we would have seen 20 years ago, or for that matter, 5 years ago. Please, stand up, wake up, support democracy in Australia. We certainly are, and we encourage you to do so. Thank you, and God bless Australia.
Well, aren't we lucky? Our gracious leader has decided to grant us some of the freedoms that we used to take for granted in this state of Victoria. How very, very generous of him. The fact of the matter is that this latest lockdown was totally and absolutely unnecessary. However, it is still just as damaging for small business. Business overall, but particularly small business. You've got to realise that hardline socialists don't like small business. Small business allows people to have freedom. It allows them self-determination. It allows them to live without being dictated to by government. And hardline socialists like Daniel Andrews, they don't like that. They don't like that one little bit. So an opportunity to give small business a belt around the ears is something that Daniel Andrews and hardline socialists everywhere is well, it's something that they never miss the opportunity to do. And maybe, just maybe, it is all about that. That's what it's all about. It's certainly not about a virus. So I'll let you make up your own minds on that. I won't make any judgment, but you have please have a think about that, because the lockdowns unfortunately will keep on coming. That is the one thing that we do absolutely know, that as long as Daniel Andrews has his state of emergency in place, more lockdowns will come. He won't be able to help himself. He just loves to show how hairy-chested he is and how much in control of us he is. And as he did last Friday, he will pull the plug on our lives at a moment's notice. And it is just appalling. Now, I have to say to you that we do not need a state of emergency in Victoria. They don't have one in New South Wales. In fact, they've never had one in New South Wales. We certainly do not need one here in Victoria, particularly in the hands of somebody as incompetent, as reckless, and as out of control as Daniel Andrews. We must stand up against the legislation that he has before the Parliament at the moment to allow his power, extreme power, total power, to engulf us all until Christmas this year. That's a horrifying prospect. We've already been through enough. We do not want to do that again. I mean, we are very much facing, if this legislation gets through, we are very much facing yet another year, yet another winter of discontent, and that is something that I'm sure none of us want. So I will be voting in the Parliament against this legislation as it currently stands, and I would ask you to enthusiastically embrace the campaign against this legislation, because you just think about this. If this legislation gets through, we are going to continue in the situation where at a moment's notice, Daniel Andrews can close down our businesses, he can close down our schools, he can close down our churches, he can take away the basic freedoms that we hold dear. That is something that we cannot, under any circumstances, tolerate for any longer. So I urge you to get involved, and I can assure you that I will be doing everything that I possibly can to preserve our freedoms, to fight for our freedoms, and to defeat this appalling bill that Andrews is trying to push through Parliament at the moment.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. It's been a long time since I've done something like this with you. Remember, it's not just a show. Please go to the link that you can see just below my face there and fill in that survey. I'll also share it later. There's also the survey from the Concerned Lawyers Network, which is if you are a business who has suffered a financial loss, you can actually fill that in and become a part of the action that they're taking against the government, which I think could be really, really useful. There's also, you can join the political movement by going to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au/we are coming. Now, I'm just going to finish off with just a bit of sentiment. Look, we're not free. A few of the speakers today have already said that, you can't take everything away and then give us bits and pieces and expect us to be happy. It does work for a lot, unfortunately, but not for people like you and I. This is not living. For me, I refuse to accept this as normal. I refuse to accept COVID normal. I like traveling. I like just going interstate. So do you. This is not living. And so for me, there's really only two options here. We fight and win, or we fight and die. Can we keep living like this? We can't make plans. We can't get married. We can't go interstate. We can't even have birthday parties. It might just get cancelled. So this isn't living. So I think everyone needs to, within themselves, make a decision. How far am I willing to go for my convictions? What am I willing to do to actually put, oomph behind what I'm saying, and kind of get out from behind the TV or the screen. So that brings me to my next point, which is, I'll just show you here in a second. I will. Yes, so obviously on the 20th of February, there is this very big protest planned. Reignite Democracy Australia will be there to report, of course. And my reports are saying, that is still going ahead. People may try to social distance and do their own thing if they want, but from what I understand, it is still going ahead. That's on Saturday, and I, like I said at the beginning, which I don't know if you heard me because I feel like I might have left some music playing while I was talking. So I will say again that I think that the lockdowns and the still having restrictions on social gatherings definitely has a lot to do with this event. So we'll see what happens there. So I just wanted to finish off, or just saying one more update, is that RDA is having a brand new website soon, and it's going to have its own social media platform within it. People will be able to actually form groups and forums and chat rooms within their own postcode. So I'm really hoping that people will be able to meet each other, form little activist groups. You don't always have to go along with what, big pages and organizations are doing. You can just do your own thing. And it feels really good to connect with like-minded people. So I can't wait to release that. It's coming out soon, which is good because people are getting booted off of Facebook left, right, and center, as you guys would have noticed. And I'm just about to go, I promise. But just so you know, Morgan C Jonas, who just spoke on the show, he has a show starting straight after my broadcast, which is finishing now. So head on over to his page, Morgan C Jonas, if you're not, viewed out yet. But look, thank you so much for thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you next time. And I'll see you on the 20th if you're there. This is Monica from Reignite Democracy Australia. Have a lovely evening.